Today, we are cracking open a book that's over 500 years old, but you know what? It feels like it could have been written for today's political stage, or maybe your corporate boardroom. We're diving into Niccolò Machiavelli's infamous classic, The Prince, to uncover its timeless and sometimes, pretty shocking lessons on power.
So you have to wonder, what's the big deal? Why is this 500-year-old political playbook still flying off the shelves? Well, I think it's because we're still wrestling with the exact same questions Machiavelli was asking about how you get power, and more importantly, how you keep it.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the man behind the book, Niccolò Machiavelli himself. Then, we'll break down 7 core lessons on power from his work. We'll also have to confront its dark reputation and see how these old ideas translate from Renaissance princes to modern-day CEOs. And finally, we'll wrap up with a big question that this book leaves us all to think about. You see, to really understand The Prince, you have to understand the guy who wrote it. And maybe more importantly, why he wrote it. The context here, well, it's everything. So let's take a quick look at his journey. Machiavelli starts his political career in Florence way back in 1498. But then, in 1512, it all just comes crashing down. He gets arrested, thrown in prison, and exiled. And it's from this place of complete powerlessness that he writes The Prince. And what's wild is that it wasn't even published until 1532, a full 5 years after he died. And this, right here, reveals his true motivation. This was not some abstract philosophical text he was writing for fun. Nope, The Prince was basically the most high-stakes job application in history. Machiavelli wrote it because he was desperate to win back favor with the ruling Medici family and get back in the game. Okay, so what did Machiavelli actually say that was so groundbreaking? We've boiled his work down into 7 powerful lessons that are just as relevant for a modern leader as they were for a 16th century prince. Let's get into it. Lesson 1 is all about foresight. Machiavelli says great leaders don't just put out fires, they see the smoke from a mile away. As he put it, prevention is better than cure. It's about solving problems when they're small and manageable, long before they turn into full-blown disasters for the state, or, for that matter, your company. Lesson 2 is just a razor-sharp insight into human nature. Why do people look for a change? Because, as Machiavelli points out, they always believe things will be better. Whether we're talking about voters choosing a new leader or employees looking for a new job, that ambition for something more is a powerful force that any leader has to understand and manage. Now, lesson 3 is about showing up. Machiavelli advised that if you want to hold on to a new state, you have to go live there in person. What does that mean for us? Well, if you're launching a new product line, opening a new office, or taking over a new team, you need to be there. You just can't lead effectively from a distance. Okay, now for a more cynical take with lesson 4, be careful who you help. Machiavelli gives this stark warning that whoever is responsible for another's becoming powerful ruins himself. Basically, by making someone else powerful, you might be creating the very rival who takes you down. It's a tough cautionary tale about the messy reality of alliances. Lesson 5 is a huge warning against quick, unstable growth. Anything built overnight, Machiavelli cautions, doesn't have the strong roots it needs to survive the first bad spell. Think about it. A company, a project, a political movement, they all need a solid foundation to handle the storms that are definitely going to come. Real success is built. It's not just seized in a moment. Lesson 6 really breaks down leadership dynamics. Machiavelli argues that it's way harder to lead the nobles, the people who see themselves as your equals, than it is to lead the people, who really just want to be left alone. This is a challenge any leader faces today when managing different stakeholders, right? And finally, the 7th and maybe the most important lesson of all, adapt or perish. Honestly, you could almost sum up Machiavelli's entire philosophy right here. The world is always changing, and a leader who doesn't adapt, he will be ruined. It's a simple and pretty brutal truth of power. So, with lessons like those, it's really no surprise that Machiavelli earned let's say, a complicated legacy. It's time we talk about the dark reputation that has followed his name for centuries. I mean, just how controversial was this guy? For his ruthless, pragmatic advice, Machiavelli was literally nicknamed Old Nick, which was another name for the devil. He was even called the devil's partner in crime. His advice was seen as so amoral that his very name, Machiavellian, became shorthand for cunning and deceit.
And all of this leads directly to the book's central burning ethical question. Does the end ever justify the means? Machiavelli's work just forces you to confront this. If a leader's harsh, maybe even cruel, actions lead to a stable and prosperous state, were they justified? It's a profoundly uncomfortable question, and there are no easy answers.
So, let's bridge that 500-year gap. How does any of this apply to us today? Well, we can look at the prince not as a literal guide for ruling a country, but as a really powerful metaphor for navigating the modern workplace. Take a look at this. It breaks it down perfectly. The prince, that's today's CEO or team leader. The state, the company, or maybe the entire industry. The nobles, those are the board members or senior executives who see themselves as your peers. And the people, they're your employees and your customers. And just like that, all of Machiavelli's advice feels incredibly immediate, doesn't it? Machiavelli urged a prince to read history. And a fantastic modern take on this is to just study the actions of successful people around you. Figure out the reasons for their wins and their losses, not just so you can avoid their mistakes, but so you can actively imitate their successes. So after all of this, after looking at the man, his ruthless advice, and how it applies to our world, what's the ultimate takeaway? We're left with one final question that really gets to the heart of it all. This is the final challenge the prince leaves us with. In our careers and in our lives, is getting and keeping power the ultimate goal? Is it the end-all and be-all? Machiavelli gives us the playbook for how to win at power, but it's up to each of us to decide if that's a game we really want to play.